How did Gojo become him, with really no one in his era to ever push or test him aside from Toji when he was a teenager up until the point he would ultimately fight Sukuna? Let's talk about it, but spoilers beware. Alright, first of all, big shout out to Craig for inspiring this video today. Thank you so much for the generous support, man. And Craig just wanted to know how I thought Gojo had such a highly refined domain with, again, no one to really push, rival, or compete with him for the vast majority of his life. And honestly, I think the answer is he was traumatized at a young age and had an insane work ethic. Let's start with the trauma. And from the jump, Gojo had an abnormal life, right? As soon as he was revealed to be the Six Eyes Limitless user, he was stripped away from his family and a normal childhood. He was literally being groomed to become the clan head, to become the future of Jujutsu Society, and to become a living weapon, which he would be, right? So he wasn't out here having a normal childhood and a normal life. Like, expectations were burying him from the moment he was born. So it was never going to be like a lackadaisical, easy life. Like, he was working from, as young as he can remember, probably. But even still, you've got the Six Eyes, you've got the Limitless. There are no real threats to you, right? So he's doing the normal work, but not really inspired to go beyond that. At least there's no reason to be inspired to go beyond that. Who knows how much work ethic he actually had as a really young kid. But then enter Toji, right? This kid was challenged for the first time in his entire life, and it shattered everything. It shattered his worldview, and it shattered his current, normalcy that he had established. And it was also the breaking point for his best friend and the only one who understood him, Geto. Like, this moment here, Gojo does not know who he is. He's completely lost, and he's searching for what to do next. And again, that all came about because he lost. So what does he do? He buries his head in his work. We know that he goes crazy with the training, developing the infinity, having automatic processes to determine what's dangerous versus what's not. He talks about developing his long distance teleportation, and of course, the domain expansion, all the while constantly refreshing his brain with RCT. So this man is now working double what a normal human would be capable of. And he, again, just buries himself in this because he never wants to experience what got him to that point after the fight with Toji. He never wants to lose again. And the tragic irony of this is that he is so buried in his work and his training that he can't even see when his best friend desperately needs him. The Six Eyes, which allow him to perceive virtually everything, misses the most important thing in his life. This is, of course, what will ultimately lead to the second great tragedy of Gojo's life, where he is forced to kill Geto. And from here, Gojo only becomes more motivated to correct society, to try and make the next generation strong, but also good people, so that they can maybe right the wrongs of this world that steal away youth and treat people like he had been treated, like Geto had been treated, like the society wanted to treat people like Yura Okotsu and Yuji, right? So Gojo just doubles down even further on what he needs to do to make this happen. All that to say is that the reason Gojo is so skilled and his jujutsu is so refined is because he is a psychopath when it comes to his work ethic. And I know that's largely belied by the fact that he's got such a goofy demeanor and is so, whimsical all of the time, but he literally is a workaholic. We got that, snippet of a natural day for Gojo, and that man is going nearly 24/7. He sleeps on average 3 hours a night, and he is just constantly working for the other 21. That is how dedicated he is to realizing his dream of a better future for the next generation. So again, trauma and work ethic. And that first one sure does inform the second one, because Gojo wants to make sure stuff like that never happens again, so he works hard as hell to help guarantee that. And then, of course, the time in the prison realm didn't hurt either, at least explicitly in regards to the domain, which was Craig's original question, because we know that his experience with extra dimensional space allowed him to manipulate and shrink his domain down to a basketball. Obviously, his domain was insanely refined even before he learned to do that, but just imagine, Gojo in the prison realm, time didn't pass for him like normal, so all he had was potentially months or years to think about jujutsu and try to hone his skill, try to develop and, prepare for the inevitable battle that was to come once he was freed, you know? He didn't have anything else to do in there. And then on the other side of this coin, I actually was asked recently by JC, like, how weak do I think Gojo would be if he didn't care? Like, kind of the opposite of the full potential series we've been doing. Like, what's the lowest potential Gojo? And honestly, I think he could be incredibly weak. Obviously, having the six eyes in the Limitless is just like an insane floor to begin with. But if you don't develop those things, then you're not really going to be that impressive, right? You could compare it to like, you know, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Like, sure, they were born with an insane level of innate talent and physicality, but if they didn't actually practice and work at basketball for their entire lives, they wouldn't be the GOAT, right? They wouldn't even be in the NBA, period, right? They would get clowned by probably any random like average athlete if they didn't work towards it. And I think the same is true for Gojo. Obviously, again, the infinity poses a unique threat for anyone to try and find a way through. So assuming a minimum potential Gojo still was able to maintain infinity, which he should be, even if he doesn't develop RCT and the automatic processing that Gojo did, you're still going to need domain amp or a domain expansion to get through it, right? But you could probably exhaust a low potential Gojo to the point where he wouldn't be able to maintain the infinity anymore. Now, how long that's going to take, you know, dealer's choice, really. It's like, how strong or weak do we want to say that this Gojo is? He's still got the six eyes for the insane efficiency, but still. I would say that probably any sorcerer worth their salt would probably be able to defeat low potential Gojo. Like, I mean, like sorcerers that have domain expansions, right? Or again, have domain amp. But yeah, I mean, low potential Gojo obviously just dies to Toji, if not before then, right? But certainly then. He probably doesn't have the wherewithal to like develop RCT in those final moments before his death. And then even if he did survive, he certainly wouldn't have the wherewithal to develop everything post Toji the same way our Gojo did. So again, like where to draw a line on like who would be able to defeat low potential Gojo is pretty hard, but he could be a scrub. Like he'd still have life on Easy Street as the Six Eyes Limitless user, but like he certainly wouldn't be the strongest, you know, just like we know previous Six Eyes Limitless users weren't as strong as him, at least in my opinion, because we know that one died to an untamed Maharaga. So yeah, I think low potential Gojo could be leagues and leagues and leagues below the Gojo that we saw. Again, to go to the sports analogy, we're talking about like the GOAT of all time in the NBA, a Michael Jordan, a LeBron James, versus a guy that can't even make the NBA. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on all of this. Gojo is a product of hard work and talent. And honestly, I think his hard work probably even outclasses his otherworldly talent as the Six Eyes Limitless user. But y'all let me know your thoughts.